Hi, this is I've got two examples here from 5-6. Okay, so there's two examples from 5-6. The first one is a proof, and the proof looks like this. And this is a quadrilateral, this is a diagonal, this is angle 4, this is angle 3, and the four corners are A, B, C, and D. All right, and we are given that ABCD, or that DC, my fault, DC is congruent to BA, and we're also given that angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. And what we want to prove in this problem is that the ABCD is a parallelogram. Okay? So how do we do that? Well, let's put down the givens. And if you remember from 5-6 notes, that there's 5 ways to prove a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. 1 is both pairs of opposite sides parallel. 2 is both pairs of opposite sides parallel. 2 is both pairs of opposite sides congruent. 3 is one pair of opposite sides congruent and parallel. And if the diagonals bisect each other, and if both pairs of opposite angles are congruent. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, if we're going to say that DC here is congruent to BA, so these two sides are congruent, and then these two angles are congruent, if you don't see this already, that this is a transversal, and angle 3 and angle 4 are alternate interior angles. And if the alternate interior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. And this angle 4 touches the transversal in the line, and this angle 3 touches the transversal in the line. So if angle 3 and angle 4 are equal, then AB and DC are parallel. And if AD and BC, if these two are parallel, then opposite sides, one pair, DC and AB, are congruent and parallel. So that's how we're going to prove that thing is a parallelogram. So let's lay this out. Statements here and reasons here. We have DC and BA are congruent. Right, that's given. And then angle 4 is congruent to angle 3. That's given. And now we can say that DC is parallel to BA. And that is because if the alternate interior angles congruent, then two lines are parallel. Because these two are the alternate interior angles. All right, so we have it. We're done. Basically, we have two sides, one pair of opposite sides, congruent and parallel. So ABCD is a parallelogram. And the reason is if one pair of opposite sides is congruent and parallel, it's a parallelogram. The quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Okay? So that's pretty much it for that proof. Okay, that's the first example. The second example in 5-6. All right, I'm going to give you 5 statements. Okay, tell which one is not true. Okay, so what you have to remember from 5-6 is the 5 ways in which we show that the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Okay, so keep that in mind for this example. All right, here are the 5 statements. Number 1 is if the diagonals bisect each other, it's a parallelogram. Number 2. If both opposite sides parallel, both pairs, right? It's a parallelogram. Number 3, if one pair of opposite sides are congruent and parallel, it's a parallelogram. Number 4, if one pair of opposite angles congruent, it's a parallelogram. And the 5th statement says if the diagonals are, or if the diagonals bisect the angles, it's a parallelogram. Okay, so which one of these is not true? Well, number 1, if the diagonals bisect each other, it's a parallelogram. That's true. Always true. If both opposite sides are parallel, it's a parallelogram. That's definitely true. If one pair of opposite sides are congruent and parallel, it's a parallelogram. That's definitely true too. If one pair of opposite angles are congruent, it's a parallelogram. Well, I think it has to have both pairs, okay? So, like a kite, has one pair of opposite angles congruent. These 2 angles in a kite are not congruent. This one and this one. But these 2 are. And a kite is not a parallelogram. So this is the one that's false. Let's look at the last one. If the diagonals bisect the angles, it's a parallelogram. Well, that is one property of a rhombus. So in a rhombus, the diagonals bisect the angles. So that's true. All right, and a rhombus is a parallelogram. So this is true. Okay, so when we think of a counter example to one statement, it's false, then it's false. Okay? Have a good day. 2 examples from 5, 6.